So thanks for joining us, Tricky.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. I'm really excited to have Tricky Bassett here, who is Director of Product Design at The Guardian, and he's joining us for Xcede Sofa Series. So welcome.
Thanks again. It's great to be here.
Good stuff. Cool. So, Tricky, tell us a little bit more about your role at The Guardian and what that entails.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm the Director of Product Design, as you know, because we've been working together for a little while.
Yes.
What does that entail? It means the product design discipline sits within product and engineering. That's the department within The Guardian that is responsible for all of our digital experiences across like app, web, etc. Being the Director of Product Design means that I sit on the senior leadership team alongside Director of Engineering, Director of Program, and report into the Chief Product Officer. And then the product design discipline itself, I lead a team of around 25 creatives that span UX research, UX design, UI design, a little bit of sort of service design, and we can probably talk about it a bit later on, but those designers and creatives and researchers all kind of sit across the various different autonomous teams at The Guardian in our product and engineering department. And then just to add to that, something that we could probably unpick a little bit is like I've got this responsibility around innovation and how we create new products and services for our readers. So that's a fairly new thing and a kind of responsibility for a team that I'm leading.
Nice. And your background's fairly varied. I know you've worked across agencies, across London and New York there, and some impressive clients, BBC and HSBC amongst others. I imagine that's quite a different environment to something like The Guardian that's obviously been going for 200 years, and I imagine quite a heritage brand and maybe slightly different ways of working perhaps to previous companies that you've worked within.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, varied is quite a nice way of putting it. Yeah, I kind of think of it as a little bit of back to front. I started like the first sort of 20 years or so of my career, I worked for myself independently, sometimes as a consultant, sometimes leading my own agencies. I then worked for some larger agencies in London where there was like where previously I'd kind of done work around primarily around UX design. The agencies I worked with in London tend to be a little bit more around design thinking, service design, and then more recently I've got like kind of proper jobs working for corporate companies like News UK and The Guardian. How does it differ? I think the way I would kind of sum it up is working agency side, there's obviously there's the pace. It's going to always be a kind of maybe slightly more playful kind of creative environment agency side. You've got all the variation of product projects and clients that you can work with. So every sort of several weeks you can be working on like something that's radically different to the things that you were working on like the prior month. But what I think is really great working client side is that the work that you do, you've got this, you know that it's going to make its way into like the hands of users and like millions of users. So if you think about the amount of people that are reading The Guardian, like the decisions we're making, the designs we're creating are actually going to sort of affect the way that people experience their lives, the news, like impact their lives. And that's just really great. I mean, it's challenging when you think about that, and it can be a little bit overwhelming, but that's also super rewarding. Because when you work agency side, sometimes the projects don't always come to fruition.
Yeah, a lot of concepting perhaps that's not going to go live. So tell me more about what it's like to work at The Guardian. Obviously, everyone's familiar with the brand, but you're in there. What is that like day to day?
I mean, personally, I feel super privileged. I feel like I'm at a point in my career that it almost feels like everything's been kind of working towards this point. I feel really privileged. I've come from a Guardian reading household, so I fully like understand the brand. It feels a little bit sort of in my blood. When I worked for a previous media organisation, my dad literally didn't sort of speak to me for the sort of 18 months of there. So that was a really great benefit of joining the Guardian, is that we can now sort of rebuild that relationship.
Rekindled.
It does. I mean, it does genuinely, like, from moving from that previous like organisation to the Guardian, it does feel a little bit like that scene in Star Wars where the stormtrooper like escapes the Death Star and joins the rebellion. It's super thrilling.
Yeah.
You feel like you're on this journey. I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but the Guardian has this kind of slightly unique sort of commercial funding set up where we're funded by the Scott Trust, and we're not funded by you know, an individual, and that means that our journalism can remain like independent and free from sort of commercial pressures. And I do feel like everyone within the organisation really appreciates that, is really aligned to the mission, which is really great, because it makes you feel like the work that you're doing is like really meaningful.
Nice.
And then finally, I'd just say that there's this sort of like really big investment in diversity at the Guardian, and particularly in the team that you've been helping us develop in product design. Like, we've managed to create this really diverse team, not just in terms of, you know, the attributes that people are born with, like their race, their gender, their preferences, but also like using that almost as a proxy for the way that people think. There's just some incredibly kind of smart, empathetic, and like, you know, diverse thinking at the Guardian, and it makes you feel like when you join the team, you just feel like you can be your authentic self, and that people listen to you, and that's really great.
Yeah, 100%. You want to go into work and feel like, you can be your true self rather than putting a bit of a mask on things there.
Like absolutely 100%. And I feel like some of like the philosophy that we've been developing in the product design team is built around this, just, you know, being considerate to each other's well-being and like looking out for people, and I just absolutely love that. I think that's really great.
Definitely. Okay, cool. I imagine kind of that diverse thinking kind of ties into how you guys are approaching the innovation side of things. Obviously, as we mentioned, The Guardian's been around for 200 years, very much known for journalism, and obviously that being previously in a print world, now moving into a much more digital landscape. How do you approach innovation in something as historical and well-known for what it does as The Guardian?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, that's kind of a very new and exciting and challenging part to the role and for the team. Like, the core team that I lead is product design team. As I said before, it includes like UX researchers that are going out doing lots of qualitative ethnographic research. We've got service designers that try and think really holistically about the end-to-end experiences that we're trying to create. We've got UX designers and UI designers, which I'm guessing the audience like pretty familiar with those roles. As a team, in the last 18 months, we've been, you know, bringing new people on board, like nurturing that team. And that team's role within product and engineering is to actually support 20 or so autonomous huddles that are working in that, I guess, that sort of like Spotify model that people are familiar with. So they're, as a discipline, we're a team with our own philosophy, but equally we're spread out across lots of other teams. It can be a bit kind of overwhelming and a bit messy, but it's also great because it's truly agile. And within that team, we've been working on things around design ops, which is, I think, like a really important, you know, sort of area that people need to focus on at the moment, and we could kind of talk about that a little bit. But in terms of innovation, that's really new, and what that's based on is, as you said, like the journalism's been around for a couple of 100 years, right?
Just a little while.
Just a little while. And yeah, I mean, like, you know, with like, if you think about editors and journalists, like their job is to understand the audience and, you know, to know what experiences people want, like how they want to feel, like the news they want to read. Also, going back to the commercial model that I mentioned earlier, the way that The Guardian operates is that it's basically, you know, free to everyone, supported by many and beholden to none. What that means is that anyone can, you know, go and experience our journalism for free wherever you are in the world, and we've got like big global audiences, and that journalism is supported by over 1 million people that give us like regular contributions.
Yeah.
We've done fantastically well there, and that support comes from all over the world. But it's realistic to think that like there is a limit to the amount of people that will wake up in the morning and think, I've read an article, I want to, you know, support the Guardian this way, or I want to support the Guardian on a kind of sort of regular basis. So we have to think from a business perspective, like, are there other like revenue models for us? And another reason to think about like that as well is that the news cycle has peaks and troughs. So if you take like a massive news event, like Donald Trump being elected, that will actually, you can look at a curve and see the amount of views those stories will get. And you can see like completely in line with that, like a bump in like support and revenues for an organisation like ourselves. And we even refer to that as the Trump bump, like when we look back at that. So anyway, we have to be realistic and think there's a certain amount of people that will support us in that way. There's like that's going to be beholden to like, you know, the news cycle. Next year there's like something like 3 elections globally. There could be elections here, there could be elections in India, there could be elections around the world. So that, you know, when you're going to have a busy news year, but then we have to sort of say, well, okay, are there other like needs for our readers that we can meet? Are there other ways that people can support us? And then you have to sort of think about like the process and the approach that in which we're gonna approach that. And that's the journey that we're on at the moment, which I can kind of like elaborate on a bit, if it makes sense. So if you kind of think about it in that way, it's realistic. Like lots of agencies, organisations will have approached innovation already, and most people will probably use the methodology where you start to think about desirability, viability, and feasibility. It's a well-known like method for design thinking, originally sort of coined by IDEO, and the thinking is that if an idea or a proposition for a business sort of scores well on that trifecta, then it's got a really great chance of, you know, succeeding as a business. And then what we kind of add to those sort of 3 areas is editorial intent. So we've got to come from a place where we sort of say, okay, if we're going to create a new product or service, it needs to be desirable for our readers, it needs to be able to make us money, and it needs to be technically like feasible for us to deliver. But importantly, it has to match our editorial intent, and I'd even go as far as to say it has to be editorially led. So when we set up this innovative product design team, one of the really important things is that we've got editorial like leadership within that team and working really closely with them. But it's not inconceivable to imagine that there's problems out there for us to solve, like, you know, is there an audience in the US that's really excited about soccer or football, as we call it, and does our kind of, you know, does our sort of slightly geeky soccer coverage appeal to that audience? Is there some way that we can help people like eat more healthily in a cost of living crisis? Is there some way that we can help people travel more sustainably? So there are the areas that we're now starting to explore. And then in terms of the approach that we're taking, it's really this sort of, how can we operate a bit like a startup within a big organisation? How can we use a lean startup approach? Of course, what that's about is putting a small team together, having principles where we use like pace over perfection, trying to move really fast by running experiments. So not trying to build the thing, just trying to build the most minimal version of the thing. I'm sure loads of people have heard terms like MVP. But it's like, how can we, if we've got like a big assumption around a product, what's the smallest, quickest thing that we can do and make and put in front of real readers to see if that's going to be desirable to them? And that's really exciting. That's a really sort of exciting place to be playing in.
100%, yeah, that startup environment within something that is so well known and established. Imagine that might come with some challenges.
Definitely. What's the main challenge around that? Probably I do often kind of think of this quote from Einstein, and I'll probably get it wrong and misquote him. I'm sure someone could Google it, but it's basically, you know, if there's a problem that you're trying to solve and you've got an hour, you're going to spend 55 minutes thinking about and understanding the problem, and 5 minutes solving it. And when I think about innovation of new products, and you're sort of starting, you know, from a place where you don't know what the product is, and you're gathering insights through research and data, and try and understand what it is you're actually trying to create and why you're trying to create it. It makes me think of what I think is referred to as like the design squiggle, where it starts off as this like kind of really messy squiggle, and then over time it gets kind of turns into like a nice sort of straight line. And when you're innovating new products and services, you're spending a lot of time in the messiness of that sort of early phase upstream. And I would say the sort of like that's relative to the sort of people that are working around the products that you're trying to create. So the first challenge is, how do you find like the right people to work in the team that are going to be comfortable with that messiness? It's not going to be for everyone. And having a process like really helps, but I'll come to that in a second. And then the second challenge is, ultimately we've all got stakeholders, we've got sponsors. That might be, you know, a product owner, it might be someone in editorial, it might be like the board. But you've also got to take those people on the journey as well. And they need, both the people in the team and the people that are investing in these new products and services have to understand exactly sort of where they are at any given moment in terms of the risk they're exposed to, and then what's going to happen next. So that's probably the big challenge. Of course, having an innovation process works, and you know, people will be familiar with like the double diamond approach to like understanding and ideating and validating problems. The challenge we've got is we've got a really new team, and the team need to define their process so that they're invested in it. So if you're starting something new, it's not just about, you know, you can't just pull a process off the shelf. You've got to create your own version of that process so that you can help people understand their way in that messiness of innovation.
100%. Yeah, not a one size fits all. You need to kind of find your own way through that.
I think, I mean, of course you can kind of lift like, you know, templates, and people are we're gonna use methods that like are kind of consistently used by other teams. You know, you're gonna use methods of research that people will be familiar with, right? Like diary studies, interviews, user testing. You're gonna use value proposition work, where you might put together a business model canvas. You might do like customer proposition canvas. So we're gonna like there's a methodology that you definitely want to kind of lean on. Yeah. But equally, we're doing innovation in an editorial organisation, so how's that different? And how do we bring everyone in the organisation along so that they're all invested in it? Because we do need that collaboration. And we all worked at OKRs, like objectives and key results, and we have objectives and key results around like the products that we want to deliver and the revenue that we want to create, but we also have objectives and key results around how we create this process and make it repeatable and bring everyone on that journey, which is pretty cool.
So design ops, you've mentioned it a little bit there. I'm seeing this come up more and more in the market. It'd be great to kind of understand a little bit more about what that looks like and how that's impacting things for you guys on the innovation side of things and elsewhere in the business.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like design ops is kind of sort of like a new challenge that lots of design teams are tackling. We had like a fantastic contractor come in as a service designer, and we were just really lucky that they had spent some time in another organisation really pushing the design ops area. I think it's one of those things that like everyone needs design ops. Like it's relevant for all of us. But because it's kind of sort of so early, like as a team, you have to decide, is this a role? Is it something that we need to hire someone to do? Or is it more of a sort of like responsibility that is shared and an approach that the team all adopt? And that's, I think, what we've been thinking about quite a lot. But the types of things that I would say fall under design ops for us, probably the biggest one is the design system. Yeah. When I joined The Guardian, the way that we were kind of using the design system is very different to how we're using it now. And we've like invested more heavily in putting like talent and designers into our design system team, trying to get engineers into the team so they're working together. Because as you scale as a team, like the design system is absolutely critical. It means that we're going to be much more consistent in our design. It means that we're going to be much more efficient. And it means that we're going to free up time to do the really kind of creative problem solving that we want to do. Other things I would say that sit under that is things like knowledge sharing, having a really good repository for finding the work that's been done before. I'm sure other people in other organisations will be familiar with the sort of concept of asking for some research and then relying on folklore of like someone that's sort of done this before, and you need to speak to this person who worked with this person who's got this data. So I think like having really good like file repositories and research repositories is also really important. A playbook is really important. Like I've spoke a little bit about the kind of innovation process and having a process. So having this kind of playbook that I guess really just sort of like if you take your overarching process, you've then got all your sort of methodology captured so that when people are being onboarded, they can like really quickly like learn the approach, but also there's a like kind of encouraging people to then go out and bring like new approaches into the playbook. And maybe the last thing I'd add is like sharing successes. Like one of the really, really important things that we've been working on as a team is building confidence across the organisation in our ability. As a design team, you can't just sort of get frustrated and go out to sort of stakeholders across the business and say like, you've got to listen to me because I'm the voice of the user. Like you first got to like earn the confidence, and it's this sort of cycle of like earn people's confidence, then you do better work, then you earn more confidence, then you do better work, and you get more freedom to set your own briefs and do the work that you want to do. And like one area where we've like moved forward in leaps and bounds is UX research, where 18 months ago we were doing lots and lots of user testing, but you know over time we've moved to much more like ethnographic research, doing diary studies with new software like Recollective, and that is a result of us kind of sharing the successes of the work that we've done well, being able to present well, and then earning confidence. And even things like today is just really important. You know, you could even say this is part of design ops, right? Making people aware of the sort of great work that we do, and then helping people understand like what it's like to work here. That all sort of feeds into the sort of recruitment and hiring, which is another element of design ops. But very much at The Guardian, we haven't been in a position to actually have one person hired to do this. At the moment, it's very much a sort of like principle of being part of the team that you have to like lean into this and get involved.
And I guess like we've kind of touched on it a little bit again, that stakeholder buy-in and taking them on the journey. I guess there's a lot of people probably watching this at home that are maybe at home or in the office with those stakeholders right now. But stakeholder management and bringing people on that kind of journey with you is often, I think, something that people can struggle with. What kind of tips do you have, or what's worked well for you guys without revealing all of your secrets?
The first thing that I would say, and I think a mistake that some people make, is they don't think about their audience when they've got an opportunity to present or have a meeting with their stakeholders. You need to sort of take yourself like out of the environment that you're in day to day, where you're pushing really hard to get something made and built, and actually really carefully think about, the moment that you're walking into, the people that you're trying to communicate with, and think a little bit like walk a mile in their shoes. So for me, it'd be, if I'm going in to present to really senior stakeholders, the first thing I'll be thinking is that they're probably going to do like 20 of these 15-minute meetings every day, and they're all going to be about like real varied amount of subjects. So I think it's always really good to do a bit of like orientating them to what you're there to talk about. Like I just think that's a really important basic. It's like whenever you start any conversation, don't assume the person you're talking to is like at the same point in the journey as you, and just really help to like orientate them to like, this is why we're here, this is where we're at, this is what we're doing next, and then bring them into the detail that you want to discuss. And then I think another thing is just understanding like the types of personalities and different types of roles. Again, if you're talking to someone really senior, like their attention span might not be quite that of someone that's kind of, you know, willing to sit down and talk to you for 45 minutes to understand what framework you're writing code in. So I think just being, you know, you often see like exec summaries in the way that people communicate. So I just think being really empathetic to like who your audience are, the other things that they're trying to think about, doing some really good orientating of like what you're actually trying to talk about, and then just structuring the way that you kind of present to them in a really just sort of like really simple way that you can get through in 10 minutes, and allowing lots of time for them to talk. Because I think a risk is that you always feel like you've got to kind of present everything that you've done and validate what you're doing. But actually, the best thing that you can get from a senior stakeholder is some really clear direction that's going to help you pivot or change the way you're approaching something.
Nice. I feel there's some good takeaways for people to maybe on board at home. And we obviously spoke a little bit there about the challenges, but what's the best bits? Like, what? Tell me more about the great things. Bit? Yeah.
It's really cool, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if you're in a team or leading a team, you're working for a brand like The Guardian, you're getting to sort of explore like new products that haven't been conceived yet. It's really varied, it's really fast paced, so like more akin to that kind of like agency environment. It's massively collaborative. Like as I said before, it will only succeed if we bring everyone on the journey. So being able to like pull people from editorial, pull people from like marketing, pull technical people into press, like to get to work with like that variation of like really smart people. The collaboration, the pace, it's also like, it's challenging, but it's like thrilling, it's exciting. Like we're actually going to launch something new, and hopefully it's going to be really awesome and loads of people are going to use it.
I'm sure they will, and I know you can't give too much away about what the product is, but I guess looking back from now to the start of the journey at the innovation, I'm sure you've learned loads of lessons on the way, and there's probably still many more to come. But if you could give your previous self a bit of advice or like tips, is there anything that you'd say to yourself if you could go back to the start of this journey about how you might want to approach it maybe slightly differently, or just something you wish you'd known?
I don't know. I think we've approached it really well. I would remind myself like how important it is to just have great people. Yeah. Like I'm so proud of the team, which is a combination of like new people that have come into the innovation team, and people that already were working in The Guardian. But I'm so proud of the diversity of the team. The skills that they've got, just the way that they've like come together and are so well aligned with what we're trying to achieve. Like when we came together, we organised like the innovation lead organised like an away day. You know, we just like hired like an off-site office. We all got together, and I just think that was so important to get that rapport in the team, like understand ways of working. So I'd remind myself of that. I think the collaboration bit has been super important. There was a moment in the process where we ran an accelerator event, which was like a 2-day kind of accelerated design sprint, and we got people from all across the organisation to get involved in that. And I think at that moment people could see that we were really serious, we were really well prepared, we had lots of great research and evidence, we were getting everyone involved, and we wanted ideas from everyone. And from that moment there was this real sense of belief within the organisation that this is something that we were approaching in a really serious way, and you know we had massive ambition for. So I think that was really good. The one thing I'd do different is just try and be a bit kinder to myself, to the team. Like I'm really tenacious, and sometimes feel like, you know, as all people maybe do creatively, like you get caught up in things, you push really hard. It's back to my original sort of like entrepreneurial background. Yeah. I think there's probably been a few moments where I could have just been a bit more chilled. Yeah. That's it.
Hindsight's a great thing. But that sounds really exciting, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing what this product could or couldn't be. any insights for everybody at home there? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Unfortunately not. Right now, I can't actually say what the product is, but it is really exciting. It's going to be a great product, and I think it's really going to bring delight to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I will be speaking at UX Brighton in about a month's time. So if you can get yourself along to that, that'll be a great opportunity to find out a bit more. By then we will be that little bit further along, and although it's only a month, we're moving really, really quickly. So by then I might be able to share some of the sort of experiments that we've been doing and the approach we've been using, and just reveal a little bit more.
A little bit more, I like it. Okay, well, everyone needs to get themselves to UX Brighton then by the sounds of things. But no, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Tricky. It's been brilliant to find out more about all the great things that you've been doing at The Guardian. And yeah, we look forward to seeing what it is that's coming next.
It's great. It's been great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.